Welcome back to Real Life Answers. My name is Ben, and this is Jesus on Culture. Welcome to Jesus on Culture, where we take one of today's top cultural issues and discuss it in a series. This series involves two pastors, Dan Bannister, pastor of Grace Alive Church in Ontario, California, and Bob Bannister, pastor of First Baptist Church Springfield, Louisiana. We'll be discussing issues such as, should Christians be involved in social justice? Is racism a sin? What is white privilege? Does it actually exist? God bless you, have a great day, and here is Jesus on Culture.
This is just, I love this stuff. Timothy Keller, in his book, Generous Justice, brought up something that needs to be addressed. Many believers are scared to take part in social justice, not because they don't care, but because they are scared of offending God. They are concerned that they will go the way of German Baptist minister Walter Rauschenbusch, I think I said that right, who threw out sound doctrine when he stood for justice. They believe if they espouse themselves with even one part of Black Lives Matter and their organization, that it endorses the entire platform. And this is directed at you, Dan. How does the Christ follower of today avoid getting lost in political platforms and doctrines that could harm them and still be active in social justice front?
So this is a very real danger, and I want to give validity to that concern because we've seen it happen in history. You go back to the 1920s, a lot of mainline denominations at that time embraced social justice and what became termed the social gospel, which was this desire to do good and to get involved in humanitarian issues and to seek to hit issues like poverty, the AIDS crisis, all these kinds of things. And what ended up happening was you saw a move of these mainline denominations away from preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, and instead a move towards social action based in humanitarian aid and a desire to meet human need. The problem then what you had was conservative denominations like ours moved to the right and said, okay, we're not going to meet these issues. We're not going to spend time on that. Instead, we're going to preach the gospel. And so you saw this move away from that toward and a move for evangelism. In fact, going back to Donald McGavran, the term church growth literally meant evangelism. And the reason was that for a time, the church had quit using the term evangelism in the way that because these mainline denominations had started using the term evangelism to mean to do these kinds of humanitarian aid. And so McGavran, when he talks about church growth, is actually talking about growing the church through conversion by sharing the gospel. So
actual reproduction.
What's that? Actual
reproduction.
Yes.
Spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is where McGavran was extremely helpful. So this is a very real issue. The church can get sucked into caring so much about social issues that it moves away from the gospel. So how do we fight against that? Well, I love the way that Ed Stetzer talks about this. And what he talks about is remembering the centrality of the gospel. Listen, everything that we do and everything that we are is defined by the gospel of Jesus Christ. As churches, that's got to be the bedrock foundation, and the content of our discipleship has to be the gospel of Jesus. Because we don't, a lot of times as Christians, and this is one of the problems that the church has today, we think about the gospel as kind of the door into Christianity. It's the diving board into the pool. And the reality is that the gospel isn't the door, the gospel isn't the diving board, the gospel is the ocean we're swimming in. And so if I'm going to grow in Christ, the only way to grow in Christ is to grow deeper in my understanding of the gospel and the gospel's implications for all of life. Mm-hmm. So what Ed Stetzer says is that we've got to recognize that the gospel, think about a wheel, like a wagon wheel. The gospel is the hub, the central part of that wheel. You can't have the wheel without the gospel. It does not exist. And then what you have are these spokes that come out and that support the movement of the church. Well, these spokes are these social actions. These are demonstrations of the kingdom of Christ. And I think that that is an extremely important thing to understand. If you're doing social justice and you're not building it on the reality that you're part of the kingdom of Christ, then you're doing it wrong. If we're engaging in justice, but we're disconnecting that from the gospel, then we're in danger of exactly the thing that these people are concerned about. Instead, every action that we take with regard to justice has to be built on the centrality of the gospel. And so every action, every way that I evaluate any social issue, any cultural issue, has to come back and look at, okay, how does the gospel speak to this? How does the centrality of the cross of Jesus Christ and his sacrificial death for the redemption and restoration of mankind, how does that impact how we look at this issue? How did Jesus set the example for us in the way that he lived and died and was raised again? So the key to not falling into this is to build everything that we do on the gospel. Now, you asked about how do we avoid things so people being concerned about being linked to Black Lives Matter and their organization, that if we endorse even one part of Black Lives Matter, then we're endorsing the entire cause. Well,
can I make a point to that real quick?
Sure,
actually,
go ahead.
because there is a misnomer in Christianity that holiness means being. It does mean being unspotted from the world, but it doesn't mean being unassociated with the world. There is a difference. I think one of the things you can point to is the fact that Jesus in his ministry, as he would take up for people and as he would preach, the religious crowd was the one to point the finger and to give him the most grief. It was not those who were lost, the ones he was trying to reach. It was those who were most concerned with holiness. They were so obsessed with it that they refused to get their hands dirty with people. What I'm starting to learn is that means that when you're talking to people and loving on people, even though you don't agree with them, you need to be in their presence. You need to be loving on them. And I'm sorry, you're going to have to take some heat for it. People are going to call you things that you don't want to be called because you are associating with people that they wouldn't associate with. Jesus was called a drunk. He was called a friend of sinners. He, I'm sure, was accused of sleeping with prostitutes, even though it wasn't recorded because it said that he was a friend of prostitutes and tax collectors and sinners. So their implication was that he was a deplorable like the people they were talking about. And that was because Jesus associated with those people. He did not do what the people did, though. That's the difference. But he associated with them. And as a result, he got heat. So, Christian, if you're wanting to do something that matters, and you do it in love, it means sometimes that you're going to get hit for it. It's just part of the picture.
Absolutely.
So what did you think? Is there anything you'd like to add to what was said today? If so, please let us know in the comments below. Also, if you like what you saw today, please hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss an episode. Finally, please join us every Monday at 4 p.m. for new issues regarding our culture.